I was a freshman in college, heading back to school at the end of winter break, when my aging Dodge Neon started to slow down on the highway. It quickly became clear to me that the only power that my car had left in it was the ability to coast, and my only hope was to get it off of the highway before it stopped. I made it to the shoulder, about 20 feet short of an exit, before the momentum that had kept me moving petered out. After my heart had stopped racing and I had affirmed that yes, I had managed to pull off the highway without running into anyone or without anyone running into me, there was only one thought in my mind. Is this a sign? You see, this drive back to school was a reluctant one. I hadn't wanted to go back, and in fact, I had waited until the very last minute to set out, as if putting off the inevitable would make it go away. That never works, does it? My first semester had been pretty miserable, to be honest. Between an advisor who made me cry the first time I met her, a roommate who ignored me, a religion department that was so tiny, and a campus that was so removed from the world that we had barely heard about Hurricane Katrina, I came home from my first semester feeling pretty unsure about this whole college thing. And so, breaking down by the side of the road just an hour and a half into my 6-hour drive back to what I assumed would be another semester of misery had to mean something. Now, I imagine we've all had moments like this, when something comes in and interrupts the status quo, when you had a plan, and suddenly it becomes clear that your plan isn't going to work out the way you expected. When you wonder, is this a sign? It is often in such moments that transformation begins. John O'Donohue writes in his poem, "For a New Beginning," in the out-of-the-way places of the heart, where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. Transformation begins with this quiet forming of a new beginning back in the corner of our hearts, often without our ever knowing. Transformation begins often before we are ready, nudging us forward with stray thoughts and dreams, with ordinary moments that we turn into signs. I love the story that Jess shared with us of that little stream trying its best to make its way across the dry desert, splashing again and again against the sand, assuming that there can only be one way forward. It reminds me so much of the ruts that we humans get into sometimes, assuming that we just have to try harder, push our way forward, strive more, not veering from our planned course, and perhaps not paying any attention to the signs that the universe may or may not be sending our way. This was certainly the case with me during that ill-fated first year of college. You see, I was doing exactly what I was supposed to do. I was the good kid who got good grades in high school. I was supposed to go off to this prestigious 4-year liberal arts school that I had gotten into and be successful. I was supposed to make friendships that last a lifetime and learn how to be an adult, like you do in college, right? And I was supposed to want this. But the truth was, I didn't. O'Donohue's poem goes on. For a long time, it has watched your desire, feeling the emptiness growing inside you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave what you had outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety and the gray promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always live like this? In that moment before transformation takes hold of our lives, we hold back, playing with that seduction of safety. In that moment before transformation takes hold of our lives, we pause wondering, is it worth the risk? In that moment before transformation takes hold of our lives, we hesitate, unsure if this new beginning will be any better than what we are leaving behind. This is always the calculation of transformation. With risk, we ask ourselves, what do we have to lose? With transformation, we ask ourselves, what do we have to gain? If we take this leap, if we abandon the illusion of safety, if we risk transformation, will we gain enough for it to be worth it? And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud became more painful than the risk it took to blossom. I imagine that Elizabeth Appel, who wrote this simple poem, had that same question in mind when she penned those lines. What do we have to gain? And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud became more painful than the risk it took to blossom. I did go back to school that semester, a couple days late and without my beloved neon. But from that day on, something began to shift. And 2 months later, I found myself having tea with one of the campus chaplains, wondering if that broken down car had meant anything more than that I should probably spend more than $900 on a car in the future. And even as the words coming out of my mouth claimed that things were starting to get better, my heart opened a little more to the possibility of a new beginning. Transformation is inevitably a process. We do not wake up one morning utterly different than we were the day before. We do not magically become something or someone different. We take our time with transformation, like that caterpillar in a cocoon, hiding from the outside world until we are truly ready to emerge, until it is too painful to remain curled up anymore, until there is nothing left but to blossom, to spread our wings and fly. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud became more painful than the risk it took to blossom. In my story, it was not until that summer that I finally had the courage to say what I had known in my heart for many months. I came home late one night with my mind made up and told my parents I'm not going back. To their credit, they took it in stride. Within a few short weeks, I had filed for a leave of absence and started applying to jobs and internships, looking for a different way to do that college thing. By the end of the summer, I was headed to Washington, D.C. to start anew. I had no place to live and no idea what would be next. But I had a 4-month internship at a little startup nonprofit that supported progressive religious folks who were living their values in the world. They were going to pay me $600 a month plus a Metro card. So I went, not knowing how it would change my life, but knowing that I had nothing to lose and a whole lot to gain. In the words of John O'Donohue, then the delight when your courage kindled and you stepped out onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not yet clear, you can trust the promise of this opening. Unfurl yourself into the grace of beginning that is at one with your life's desire. The truth of transformation is that it often begins with that opening. Sometimes it is a moment of crisis, sometimes a moment of inspiration. Sometimes it begins with a mistake, and sometimes with a stroke of luck. However this opening is created, it is that openness, open-mindedness, open-heartedness that ultimately allows transformation to occur. It is the knowledge that facing whatever it is to come will ultimately be better than staying put, than remaining tight in a bud. This is true not only of personal transformation, but also of institutional transformation. Often it takes some moment of opening to pave the path to transformation. Over the past few weeks, our Unitarian Universalist Association has been engaged in an important conversation about the effects of white supremacy in our faith. The conversation was sparked by a single hire, a senior staff position for which a white man was hired instead of a woman of color. The reason given was one of fit. The woman was told that she wasn't the right fit to work with the team. People from across our association jumped into the conversation, including many people of color who decried the language, wondering, would a person of color ever be the right fit to work with a team of white folks? And pointed out that this is just a symptom of the insidious white supremacy that lies within the heart of our faith. And as a result of the controversy, our UUA president, Reverend Peter Morales, resigned on Thursday, stating that he was not the right one to move our faith forward on this issue. Reverend Morales' resignation is unprecedented, it being the very first time in our history that a president has resigned. And given that there were only 3 months left in his presidency, there are a lot of opinions about whether or not this was a good decision on his part. Now, given that there are all kinds of details that we can't know, I'm not about to declare one way or another if Reverend Morales made the right decision. But I do wonder if this moment is our opening. The history of Unitarian Universalism is mired in white supremacy, from stories of Black Unitarians and Universalists who were denied leadership opportunities in the early 20th century, to the Black empowerment controversy of the 60s and 70s, which we really screwed up, to the microaggressions that people of color experience every day in our 21st century UU congregations and association. No matter how much our white guilt is stirred up and how defensive we get about our good intentions, white supremacy is woven into the fabric of our faith, just as it is woven into the fabric of American society. And so I wonder, is this our opening? Is this the moment that we take the next step together and risk transformation? One of my colleagues posed the question, how does an example of typical injustice become a crisis out of which change becomes possible? Is this the moment for our faith when the risk to remain tight in a bud is more painful than the risk it takes to blossom? I can only hope that when we look back on this moment 50 years from now, the answer is yes. O'Donoghue's poem concludes, "Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. Soon you will be at home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you." What is the world that awaits you? What is the world that awaits us? What is the world that awaits our faith? Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease in risk. For there is another world waiting if we but have the courage to risk transformation.